Quilter's Creative Touch 6 Plus gives you the next level of control for your automation. In this video, I'm going to show you how to focus on pantographs portion of QCT6 Plus. So let's get started. In this video, I'm going to focus primarily on pantographs, and I'm going to give you some tips and tricks for doing things like borders and sashing in addition to just doing pantographs. We're going to start by playing in simulation mode, and then I'm going to do some sewing on an actual quilt. But I'm also going to give you some tips and tricks on how to do things like borders and sashing using QCT6 Plus. Since I'm working in simulation mode, why don't you go ahead and grab your tablet and follow along with me. We're going to start in pantographs, so we're going to select that, and it's going to prompt us to set a safe area. So I'm going to set 45 for the width of my quilt, and I'm going to be working on the 21 later, so it's got me a limit of about 18, so I'm going to go ahead and set that. So we're going to start by just selecting a pattern. So there's a couple places where you could do that. Up at the top left, you can select a pattern, but in Stacker down at the bottom, there's also a select pattern. So either one will get you the same locations. And here you're going to have a variety of patterns you can select from. So I'm going to go into the patterns folder here, and you've got things like continuous line or edge to edge. So I'm going to go ahead and choose one of our continuous lines, and I'm going to pick cat ball. It basically just put one in, and you'll see that at the bottom corner here where it says patterns and rows. So we can add as many patterns and rows as we would like by pressing the buttons. And if I want to add more than one row, I have the choice to do 1 or 2 rows. Right next to that, you have information about your dimensions. And so right now, when I have 1 row, you can see that the row height is set at 17.1. My pattern width information is on there as well. You also have your total width being the total width of the quilt that we set, and the total height, which is set to the quiltable space. But you can change that. So I'm going to go ahead and change that so I can actually set that for what the size of that row is, which means I can also adjust the size of my design here. Play with those to help you plan your designs in your quilt based on the sizes that you have. So we're going to go ahead and throw 2 rows in here. Now, one of the nice things of having 2 rows is that you're able to kind of look at things like nesting your designs and all of that. So to make it a little bit easier for you to follow along, I'm going to do some changes to my options. In options, you can change like the color of your cells just so they kind of stand out a little bit more. And so we're going to go with a nice yellow and an active cell color of green, just so this will kind of help us see things a little bit better. Now I have the 3 cats on here. We'll play with those in a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and change my pattern. I'm going to select these 3 daisies and go ahead and adjust my height here. And so if I do equal, what it's trying to do is it's trying to take the size of the pattern design and it's spreading those out evenly, and you can see that now they're not connected. You can still connect them when it's time to go. Or if we want to make sure that it is spreading out so it's touching both edges, then we get even further spread. If we want to make sure that it is connected, then we have this. And you can see that the pattern changed a little bit here and there as we were playing with that. Another thing I want us to take a look at is on the green one there, do you see the 4 little red diamonds in the corner? That is indicating what is actually active. So if I click all or none, then basically nothing is been selected to actually work at that time. But you'll see that what looks like your stitches or your design lines have thinned out. That's how you know that nothing is active. I can select all, and now you see how they get deeper, and then of course my other highlight color that I've added has been on there. I can alternate the rows, see that the red diamonds have moved, so now if I start making any changes to is going to be the active ones. So now we're going to move on to some of the more advanced features. So again, we can go into the select pattern. This time I'm going to go to blocks, and I'm going to pick the cute little bear, and we'll go ahead and adjust our sizes here. And now we're going to look at some of the features that are more to the right of your rows. We have our vertical alignment, so we'll drop the pattern height down to 7, and that fit is how we're going to move those bears around. We can have them centered, we can have them extend to touch the top and the bottom of the rows, or we can have them set to just sit here in the middle. You also have some of the other features here where you can play and adjust until you get the look that you want for those. I can add like another bear here so that the bear doesn't look as stretched out. Now we've got size and move. Once you kind of click size or move, over in the very right top you have something that's called step. And step is how much it's going to move each time you click it. And you've got increments from tiny all the way to jumbo. So medium's usually a good place to start, but if you just want that little nudge, going small or tiny is what you kind of want to do there. Also have these arrows with the little boxes, and so you can widen, you can shrink, and it's only going to react based on what you have locked in for your choices. So that's how you kind of use those features. For the move, I'm just going to select one of the rows, and now I can just adjust it. So maybe I want to control a little bit of how it kind of moves along, and I can just fiddle with that. So you can see that top row moving. Of course, right now I have some spaces, or I could use the stagger feature and it's going to auto move that for me. All of these have the ability to reset back to the way that they were. Next, we have the flip and the rotate. There are different flips and rotations that will occur for you, so we'll play with the flip first. The top one is going to cause everything to flip to the opposite side on the horizontal. The next one down is going to alternate your flip, and the next one down is also going to alternate but the other way. Going back to the top is going to put it back to that original design. You can also flip vertically, or we can flip every other one, and again the bottom one will just reverse that particular flip. I particularly like this one, so I'm going to leave that one set as is. The next thing would be rotating. So here at the bottom of that same section, you have a button to turn on the rotating, and now you can do some rotation of your designs. So right now they're going counterclockwise, and I'm just doing kind of the 5-degree increments there. Or if I want to go clockwise, then I can go clockwise as well. If I want to take it back, very easy, just go ahead and hit the 0. So if I want to make sure that this is going to be a continuous design, here at the bottom is one for adding the parts of the design that would fill in that are not the full design. We got kind of half a bear on one side and half a bear on the other side. And so that's going to continue to give us that edge-to-edge design that we're looking for, but it's going to cut those off because we staggered them. So your QCT6 Plus is very powerful, and so definitely play with them, figure out what it is that you want. Once we have everything the way that we like it, our sizing, our rotation, whatever it is, we're ready to go ahead and place this pattern. There are 2 ways that you can place a design. You can place as a single pattern, or you can sew in zones. Let's briefly look at place a single pattern. Basically with something like this, you are placing it like it's a block. So maybe you've set all this up and you don't want it to go everywhere. Maybe you want it to go in one little section. And so you have your nodes, the big circles in gray, and when you're in simulation mode, you have that half dark, half light arrow. That is your pretend needle. And you would just kind of place that wherever your needle would go. Then you would pick your next location for your needle, go ahead and click on that node, and you can do the same thing for the other ones. Now you do also have other ways that you can set things. You can do a 1-point placement, the 2-point placement. We just did the 4 points, a block placement, which will keep it square for you, and you just set the 2 points on point or triangle. So you do have the ability to play with those designs that way, but you're going to be limited in the placement within your space. The other thing that you can do is stretch your design so that it fits, or select fit, which is going to shrink it so it's within the parameters that you set earlier. You have show pattern size, which I think is very helpful. You can still do things like flipping at this point. So you're not at the point where like you can't still make adjustments. You can set margins, and of course there are reset buttons there as well. And then you would just go to quilt to quilt your design. And that's going to take you to the quilting interface. If you're doing a true edge-to-edge design, or AKA a pantograph, then you're going to want to sew in zones. And it's going to prompt you to save your zone session. And I definitely recommend that you do that. And so now we're in the quilting interface. Now before we start kind of messing with everything, we're going to go into Zone Manager. At the top you have things like settings and show trims and optimize, but we're going to focus on the bottom right now. So we've got placements, we have the features for when we get to sewing, like pulling up the bobbin, and then over on the right bottom we have the Zone Manager. So let's click on Zone Manager, and it's always going to give you this warning, because if you set anything else, if you've optimized your design, all that's going to erase, because you have to do it again when you're getting ready to do your placement. So this isn't a big deal. We're just going to say yes. And then in here, we're going to see all of the zones that we have. Now, when we're working on a rolling frame, and today we're going to be working on a wide rolling frame, we won't have anything but the one zone. But if you're working on a hoop frame, then you'll have more than one zone depending on your quilting area. Up in the right corner, you can hit zones, and you can even simplify your zones. Down in the left-hand corner, you'll see arrows. When you have more than one zone, you'll be able to kind of move between those. And then you have your zone scale. Because of the frame that we're planning on using, the zone scale is set to 100. You do have the ability to do some rezoning if you'd like. Now, here we also have zone placement. When you are on a rolling frame, you have the ability to either choose 4-point placement or center placement. So if you have a particular design that you want to make sure that starts in the center every single time, then you might find that placement to be the best. You also have the ability to change your zone start position. So right now, it's always starting on the left and going to the right. But this is going to give me back and forth. The third choice is also a continuous one. It's going to stitch down those lines, so right on the edge of your quilt. Once we've kind of messed with our zone settings, then we can get into setting it up for sewing. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes. I think anytime you make changes, you want to go ahead and save whatever those latest changes are. So next, I like to mess with the settings, make sure I have everything the way that I want it. You have your choice of sewing speed. So slow is going to give you the best stitch quality. There's fast. It's going to sew as fast as it can. My preference is medium. I think I get a nice balance between quality and speed. You can choose your stitch tie-off mode. There's back and forth, or it's going to do micro stitch. You can also set up automatically pull bobbin, and then there's pause at trim lines. Down here last, we have stitches per inch, and then on the screen to the right, there's a little window there, and it's giving you all that information, but it also shows you currently the number of trim lines that you have. So we're going to set it by clicking OK. Up here, if I don't want to see the trim lines, you can take that off. I always want to see the trim lines because I want to know what is it do I need to deal with. Next is optimize. Now the optimize screen is going to give me options to kind of look at how this is going to stitch out. So if I want to change the order that it's stitching, then I can click the numbers here and click on that yellow and continue until I get it in the way that I want it to stitch. And that's going to shorten some of that. But you'll also see that because of the start and stop positions, it's trying to do something a little funky with that. So I can also change those start and stop positions. So the red one is the stop. If I click on that one, that now changes it to the start position of number 6 bare, and that is going to shorten all of those trim lines that we have. So I think it's a very important step to always go in and optimize, and it's one of the last things that you want to do before you actually get into stitching. Now, if I want to get rid of the trim lines, there's a couple ways that you can do it. One is clicking on down here for check for breaks, and then click on animate stitching, and it's going to stop at each one of these and ask me, do I want to remove the break? A yes is going to create a stitch line there. A no is going to leave that. So I'm going to say no on this first one. And then maybe these two bears, I do want them to be sewn together. So I can say yes there, maybe no on this one. And so when it gets done, you'll see everywhere that I had said yes, it has created a line for me that connects those. So that is going to stitch out. Now the other option for me would be to just click on the blue lines there. That would get rid of those particular lines for me. Once I've got everything the way I want it, I can save it if I choose at this point, but I'm going to go ahead and just click OK. So now you'll see that in the quilting interface, that has changed with those settings that we have in there. Then we're ready to do our sewing, and I'm going to show you all that at the frame. So now I think it's time to actually try it on a quilt. So we're going to start by setting our safe area. Now our safe area is a little bit different than the size of our quilt. We want to go as far up and off the quilt to the left, and then same thing but far down on the right and off the quilt. I'm going to select the pattern that we're going to use for this one. And before we actually place anything, I'm actually going to use the measuring tool. So for this quilt here, I made a couple of borders and some sashing so that we can practice those things that I mentioned to you, those tips and tricks. So the area that I want to do my pantograph is only going to be in each of the solid block rows that I have here. So we're going to want to measure that so when we're prepping our design in the software, we know exactly the space that we're trying to fill. So up at the top, you'll see what looks like a little yellow measuring tape, and you can set the kind of measurement that you want. And I am going to measure across and down, so what I have set is perfect. And then I'm going to use the jog forward button to move my needle close to but not touching the fabric, just to help me get aligned into that corner. And I'm going to hit the first button, which is going to get me that measurement. And then I'm going to take it all the way down to the bottom corner, and we'll hit the bottom measurement. So it's measuring those blocks for me. Up here at the top, you'll see what that height and width is. We'll apply that measurement, and then that's going to show up for us in the box here. I like to reselect the pattern because that's going to adjust it for me then based on my new sizing. And now we're just going to decide how many that we want in here. Now, I don't want it to completely touch, so I'm going to say 7 so that I've got that little bit of wiggle room. So I'm going to play with the second row option. And I can add some more patterns if I want. Oh, I think I really like that. Okay, I think I've got it how I want it. We're going to go ahead and hit the sew in zones. Remember to save your zone settings. I can double check things in Zone Manager how I want it to stitch out. So I want to do the 4-point placement, so I'm changing that. Now I'm ready to place. All right, so we're ready to pull up the bobbin. So I'm going to click the pull bobbin button, and it's going to take it to that first start. All right, once I have my bobbin up, I'm ready to hit sew. It's doing that tie-off stitch that I selected. All right, let's pretend like we ran out of bobbin or a thread broke, something like that happened, and show you how to use the repair pattern features. So I'm going to go into repair pattern. I'm going to move the machine to my closest stitch. Again, I can use the jog forward button to help me get the needle really close to where it is, and then I'm going to press closest stitch. I'm just going to double check that where it is here versus the pattern is correct. And if it's off a little bit, I could use the trace back or trace forward in the pattern, or I could use the plus minus. That looks pretty good, so I'm ready to pull up my bobbin and go back to sew. Now the machine's going to re-engage with the automation, and it's going to continue to stitch. All right, now I'm going to show you how you can do borders and sashings using QCT6 Plus. And just like we did before, I'm going to use the measuring tool. And we're just going to adjust this until we get the look that we want. I like to leave a little bit of space for when I square up the quilt and add the bindings. So I'm going to adjust that in here. All right, I think I like how that looks, so we're going to this time place as a single pattern. And we're going to do the 4 points. And then I'm ready to place it. So we'll go into the quilt interface. And just as we did before, we'll pull up the bobbin, hit sew. Now I like to use the select and sew features when I'm doing like the borders and the sashing because it gives me some other options that I could also play with in the design. So we're going to do a similar thing for the next border since I have 2 borders here, but I'm going to show you how you could place different corners first. We're going to do that with the select and sew. All right, we're going to go to Toolbox and we're going to use our marking tool. And we're going to add that location where our needle is and where we want our design to go. All right, so that creates me a boundary box, and now I can place my design inside. I don't want to actually stitch the box, so I only have the pattern selected, and then everything else is the same. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, but I'm going to flip the design, and then the inside will do exactly the same way we did the top border. And to fill in your sashings, it's basically the same thing. Measure it, select what design you want, place it how you desire, and you're good to go. So we're just going to finish this up, and you can see what the final look looks like. One more tip that I can give you for borders when you are using QCT6 Plus, when you're doing your bottom border, because you're doing like the select and sew or sew the whole design, you have the ability to flip your design so that it will appear the way that you want it. So depending on your design, if it's one directional and you want it to be opposite, you can just go ahead and flip it right in there. I hope you enjoyed learning about QCT6 Plus and all the things that you can do placing your pantographs. Do me a favor and remember to ring that bell so you get notifications on the next support video, and let me know in the comments what else you'd like to learn about automation or any of our Grace products. Until next time, I'm going to go ahead and finish this up. Bye-bye. There's so much more to learn with Grace Company. Visit our Quilters Playground channel or our original Grace Company channel for even more helpful videos.